Hello, thank you for tuning in today and welcome to our digital talk, the EU Council Presidency in 2021, passing the baton from Germany to Portugal. The Friedrich-Naumann Foundation is working for freedom and liberal solutions in more than 60 countries around the globe. And my name is Rahel Zibner, and I work as project manager for the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation for Freedom in Madrid, which is active in Spain, Italy, and also covering Portugal. And that's why I was invited to be your moderator today. I will replace Barbara Wessel from Deutsche Welle, Brussels, who could not join us today on short notice. Today, we want to take a closer look on the chances and challenges of the current Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union. And I'm very happy to present our distinguished panel guests to you who are joining us from all parts of Europe today, from Brussels, from Portugal, from Germany, from Madrid. And I would like to start with the MEP Moritz Körner. Moritz Körner, it's great to have you on this panel. He is a member of the Executive Committee of the German Free Democratic Party, FDP, and a member of the Regional Executive Committee of the FDP North Rhine-Westphalia. Since May 2019, he has been a member of the European Parliament, where he sits on the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs, as well as the Committee on Budget. He is the chief negotiator of the Renew Europe Group for the Rule of Law and Digital Services Act, something which we will surely dig into a bit deeper during this talk today. Mr. Körner, welcome. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, and I'm also looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Then it is my honor to introduce the ambassador of the Portuguese Republic to Germany, to you, His Excellency Francisco Ribeiro de Menezes, I hope I pronounced that correct, who has been in office since February 2020. Prior to that, he was amongst others ambassadors to Sweden and Spain, I noticed that very carefully, as well as non-resident ambassador to the Principality of Andorra. He has received numerous awards from various countries, including the Order of Merit of the Federal Republic of Germany. Dear Ambassador, it is our honor to have you today.
Thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be here, and thank you to the Foundation for this opportunity. Thank you.
Last but not least, I would like to present Katharina Mayer to you. She is our guest from Porto today, as she told me before. She is a member of the Executive Committee of Iniciativa Liberal, Portugal's Liberal Party, and she is leading the interest group on education policies. Katharina ran for MEP in the last European Parliament election and was the head of a district list in the last Portuguese MP elections. She's one of the founding members of Iniciativa Liberal to make liberal voices and ideas heard in Portugal. Professionally, Katharina is a consultant in technology, innovation, and a professor at the University of Porto. Welcome, Katharina.
Thank you so much. I would like to greet all the panel participants. So, Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Körner, and I would like also to thank the Foundation for this great initiative. Thank you so much. Looking forward for the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Katharina. We're all looking forward to it. And I would also like to welcome our digital audience. Welcome. And before we start, just an advice to the online audience, please feel free to comment and ask questions during this discussion. We will answer them mainly in the end, and do not forget to keep your questions short, and also to whom of our guests your question is directed to. Do not forget to mention that. Okay, great. I think we're all set, so we're ready to dive into the discussion. And Portugal currently holds the EU Council Presidency, as we all know, which is part of the so-called trio presidency, which comprises 3 countries, Germany, who has just passed over the baton to Portugal in January. And then in the end, Slovenia will conclude this trial presidency in the second half of 2021. The three countries have collaborated intensively and also have defined a number of central themes together for their 18-month program. So I would propose let's start by reflecting on the German presidency a bit. Moritz Körner, what were the success stories and pitfalls of this presidency, and what has not been tackled maybe and has been left to Portugal to take over? Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'm happy for this discussion, and then really looking forward to also hear what from the Portuguese presidency and on the challenges and things they want to achieve. I think we had lots of expectations for the German presidency. Of course, if Germany takes over the presidency, there are lots of expectations as the biggest member state. But I think this presidency was, of course, completely overshadowed by the corona pandemic. So I think lots of plans the German presidency had before had to be skipped, or we had the problems with the meetings not taking place in person, online conferences, video conferences. I think the Portuguese presidency still will be a little bit affected by this, and this, of course, also lowered a little bit the workload which was to achieve. I think the main goals or main achievement of the presidency was, of course, that we, in the end, in December, we had finally the agreement on the budget, on the next long-term European budget for the next 7 years. And with this new budget, of course, there was also the recovery fund, Next Generation EU, so 750 billion euros to tackle the corona crisis, the economic crisis with this pandemic. So I think this was the main achievement, to really finalize all the negotiations. But we also had a long discussion on the rule of law within the European Union. I think this is a very important issue. The European Union is not only an economic union, it's also about values. And this was very important for the Parliament. I was one of the negotiators of the Parliament on this rule of law file. We wanted to achieve that EU funds are dependent on the values, on rule of law and acceptance of rule of law. And as you all know, there was long discussion with Poland and Hungary. And in the end, we have a deal. I would have expected the German presidency to be a little bit tougher when it comes to Poland and Hungary. Now we see a little bit, we have the problem that the European Court of Justice will first rule on this new mechanism. I don't have anything against that you ask the court, but I expect the European Commission to start already working on this new instrument so that we protect the rule of law in Europe. That would be, I think, the main importance. And I think Germany was pushing not enough on this issue. We have some small successes, also a climate agreement that we reached the climate target on 55%. But on other fields like migration, there is still a lot of work to do for the Portuguese presidency.
Yes, a lot of to-dos still on the list, which brings me to our second guest, the ambassador. So from your perspective, how many to-dos are there still on the list, and which to-dos do you still have on the list? And how did this process with the trial cooperation work, the taking over of the EU presidency from Germany? Maybe you can elaborate a bit on what Portugal has inherited from this presidency. And I mean, if I only think of the dispute about a common EU asylum and migration policy, I see what huge challenges are ahead of Portugal, and also Portugal has set quite an ambitious agenda itself, if we're thinking of foreign policy or social policy, and all of that in the light of an ongoing coronavirus pandemic. So what focal points does Portugal set, and how can it use its potentials for the benefit of the whole EU?
Thank you very much, and thank you to Herr Körner. You have given me enough material to talk about for a few hours, but let's try to be brief. First of all, the cooperation among the trio is excellent, and it is our belief that the sort of coordination that has taken place between Berlin, Lisbon, and Ljubljana actually reinforces the concept of trio itself and its relevance to the daily works of the European Union. It's all about continuity and coherence and predictability. Obviously, we had a trio program which we had to bin because of the emergence of the crisis, of the pandemic crisis. But we readapted the trio program and we readapted our national programs to this issue. The transition itself between Berlin and Lisbon was absolutely seamless at all levels, at the political, at the technical, at the diplomatic level. This involved the whole of the two governments, really, so know exactly where we are on each file, and that is very important. One brief comment on the German presidency itself. It is not the first time that we work together with you, Germany, in the pre-trio formats of 2007. That's when we actually managed to draft and get accepted what became the Lisbon Treaty. So we have a long history of working well together between our two capitals. We pass a very favorable, enthusiastic judgment on the German presidency. And we believe that in that sense, we are standing in the shoulders of giants. Because what Germany did, as Herr Körner has already pointed out, was to lay out with the other members of the Council under your leadership the foundations for what we have to do to overcome the pandemic crisis. And this is the main focus of our presidency. We need to address the economic response to the pandemic. So this means that we have to implement the decisions taken at European Council level on the Multiannual Financial Framework, on Next Generation Europe, on all the programs that depend on those results. We are very much aware of the importance of the rule of law in this framework, but also as an overarching principle for the very essence of what Europe is about. And we will be actually happy to go on with the peer review mechanisms during our presidency, which were adopted a short while back. The second aspect will be the social response to the crisis. Europe is first and foremost about the people, about how people cope with these realities. And we hope to strengthen the European social pillar. We will dedicate a special summit to the European social pillar, not forgetting that the treaties speak about social market economy as the basis for our union. And the third aspect is obviously the health policy response to the pandemic. A lot has been achieved in terms of articulation of national positions, in terms of dealings with the world outside the Union. We have worked together with the vaccination programs and the rollout of the vaccines. And we believe that at the end of the day, what we are discussing is the shaping although in very specific and difficult circumstances, but we are dealing with the shaping of a future European health union. And this is very important also in social terms. So what have we inherited? We have inherited the tools, and this is why our motto has been, I think, very well chosen, time to deliver a fair, green and digital recovery. It's about recovery, it's about the social pillar, it's about climate transition, it's about digitalization, and it's about a Europe that is open to the world. We can go into this later if you want. Obviously, we will have to take care of issues that it was absolutely impossible for a single presidency, even in normal circumstances, to sort out. If we talk about the reform of the European asylum system, if we talk about the issues of migration, if we talk about the development of the digital agenda, if we talk about the approval of everything that comes with our commitments in terms of climate change and the goals that were set at during the last European Council. If we look at everything that we still have to do with Great Britain, because frankly, Great Britain will never be just another partner for Europe. It will always be a special partner for Europe. If we look at the world around us and what we can hope to achieve with partners like Latin America, with India, with the United States, at a time when there has been this deep, profound, long-awaited change in the way that America's internal, domestic, and foreign policies will be conducted. We think that this is a very good omen and a very good sign for what we can hope to achieve during this semester. I've tried to condense this as much as I could, but I look forward to more specific questions on all these and any other issues. Thank you.
Yes, you have already dived into a lot of topics on the agenda of the EU presidency of Portugal. And you just mentioned the slogan of the Portuguese presidency, which is time to act for a fair, green and digital recovery. Obviously, the slogan touches upon huge challenges. And if we look particularly at the word fair in this phrase, this surely points towards one of the focal points of Lisbon, which is social policy, which I think is also a huge issue if we think of the COVID-19 health crisis. And so how exactly do you plan to tackle this? I assume that this is also very closely connected to digitization, digital inclusion, education. I'm just very aware of this topic, also because we are here situated in Madrid with the office of the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation here in Madrid, and youth unemployment, for example, is a huge topic. So how does Portugal plan to tackle this issue? And also, Katarina, maybe I may invite you as well, what your suggestion would be from a liberal perspective. But maybe, dear Ambassador, please go first.
I don't mind going second, but I can also summarize this. The treaties are very precise, and they have been studied and gone over and reviewed a number of times. The basis is people, values, and the social market economy. The treaties themselves are very limited in the competences that are transferred to the Union on these matters. But we have had a very successful, I think, development over the years about what we mean by social Europe. And our aim is at this stage, precisely because the transition will be very swift, very rapid, both in terms of digitization and in terms of the green deal that was proposed and later developed. Our idea is to build on the Gothenburg acquis, and we aim at organizing a social summit in Porto, precisely in May. It will be divided into two main events. One conference which will involve all social partners, all the relevant institutions. We want to have a discussion on how Europe can develop policies and support national policies. And then on the second day, we will have a meeting of the leaders of, talking about heads of state and governments. We are hoping to have a sort of Lisbon declaration on social commitments, which then can be endorsed by the leaders. And just to make it more interesting, we have also thought that that would be the best occasion to have the summit meeting with the Indian Prime Minister. So, you know, we will hope that by then it will be possible to have a physical meeting. On the contents of the things that we want to discuss, we have to focus on skills for our employed and for our unemployed and for those who are about to be employed. The labor market is becoming increasingly challenging, and we need to have a discussion on skills, on reskilling, and on equipping better those who join the markets, the labor markets. We need to discuss innovation, and we need to discuss the strengthening of Europe's companies and enterprises, because it is our belief that there is nothing more social than a market that is actually able to absorb those who are seeking employment, those who want to change, and those who are entering for the first time. And then we have to look at the support network of the economy and of the state. How do we take care of those who face special needs, special difficulties? This also has to do about equality. It has to do with respect for the seniors. It has to do with opportunities for the young. It has to do with eradicating any forms of discrimination that might still exist in our labor markets. Obviously, this will also be based, this work that we aim to achieve will also be based on the action plan that the Commission is scheduled to release on social policies. We hope to have this report from the Commission in March. So that will give us also time to further this discussion. Obviously, this has to do also with national parliaments. And I'm very happy to have a representative from Iniciativa Liberal that has been carving a name for itself in Portuguese politics as a relative newcomer, and also with the European Parliament. Thank you.
Yes. Keyword Iniciativa Liberal, Katarina, talking about creating opportunities. What's your take on this?
So I would like to actually thank the ambassador for the brilliant overview that he delivered on this aspect of social policy that the Portuguese presidency is actually due to deliver. Well, from a liberal perspective, it's kind of challenging because liberal ideas have just been carving their way in Portugal for a very recent few years. So actually, the Iniciativa Liberal is actually 3 years old. And we have been having quite a lot of socialist ideas that have been ruling us, with let's say, not so great effects in many areas. But from a European perspective, the ambassador and you, Rael, you brought some very interesting points. One of them is actually youth employment or youth unemployment. So what is going on? Well, I believe that the situation in Spain is a little bit more critical than ours. But I don't think that we, in the European context, should see the countries as islands. We should see the European space as a space for opportunities for young people, well, and even for older people also. But younger people tend to be, it's easier for them to move for several reasons. Because they don't really have, you know, kids or family ties, because they just did Erasmus, which is actually a really interesting European-wide initiative to explore a little bit more of other countries' cultures and know the others. And actually that's really, really important. So one thing that I believe that the European Union should tackle is actually corporativism. What we see here in Portugal is that frequently it is extremely hard to get not only your degree acknowledged, so a university degree acknowledged, but also your professional qualifications. That actually hinders movement around, throughout the borders of each country in the Union. And we believe that people should pursue their opportunities, and corporativism still is something that that we see as a barrier to get, you know, to exercise your profession. So in the social aspect, our view is we view a Europe of solidarity, absolutely. We saw, for instance, the great example led by the Commission on buying vaccines for SARS-CoV-2, but we also see this. We don't want this Europe of solidarity to be a you know, a homogenized Europe. Every single time throughout history that you have tried to make Europe a homogeneous space in terms of traditions, culture, language, you name it, we have had bloodshed. And that's something that we don't feel like we should lead in that way. So respect for the differences is something that you should have clearly in mind. And that means that we see, for instance, something that is frequently spoken about in European politics is, for instance, taxation and taxation rates and how taxation is done. So we don't think that there should be a homogeneous tax for Europe, or a tax rate, if you want, for Europe, because each country actually has its own specificities, and countries should be able to, let's take a managerial term, do co-opetition, so compete while cooperating also, in order to attract talent, to attract companies, and to deliver jobs. And that goes into innovation, actually, that His Excellency, the Ambassador, touched upon. It is quite known that Europe has been lagging behind in innovation, in delivering innovative companies to the world. There is a failure in, for instance, if you look at capitalization in the stock markets, you don't see European companies. You see US companies and you see Chinese companies in the top. So this is something that actually should worry us all, and we should believe we should actually address what kind of constraints do we have, not only in our own market, but also in competition in the world markets, so worldwide, that is actually lagging and leaving our companies behind. So I think that the digital single market can be a great opportunity, but it can also turn us to the inside, and we should be wary of that. And I think I'll stay here.
Thank you, Katharina. Quite a big take you took on all these different issues, but very important issues. Mr. Körner, would you like to comment on what Katharina said?
Yeah, I think Katharina and the ambassador had a pretty good summary on social and also the economic challenges. I think a big task for the Portuguese presidency will, of course, be to coordinate the recovery now. We have this recovery resilience facility, which is the big chunk of the money out of the budget, and all the member states will develop their national plans. Of course, a green transition, of course, with digital, what Katharina mentioned, with investment in digital, but also in youth and opportunities for youth and fighting youth unemployment. So I think this will be a big chunk of work. And I think what was interesting was that Katharina also mentioned digital. I was very astonished and impressed to see that the Portuguese presidency also has the idea of a charter of digital rights in its program, which is, I think, very good. That we also in the council, there's more discussion also on fundamental rights when it comes to the digital sphere. To be honest, I'm working in the fundamental rights or justice part of the parliament, and normally we fight against the council on these issues. So I think it's good that maybe Portugal starts a new discussion here. Of course, there will also be the big discussion on the Digital Service Act. We all know how to regulate these big platforms after the Trump Twitter ban and so on. We know how important it is that we have new rules for the digital sphere. And this will be a big discussion in Brussels for the next year. So Portugal has to start to organize this discussion in the council. And the ambassador already mentioned it. And I think it's a good idea that the Portuguese presidency is focusing when it comes to foreign policy on the relationship to India. I think it's interesting because this is the biggest democracy we have. It's very interesting to strengthen ties to India. So as a member of the India delegation of the European Parliament, of course, I'm also very happy about this focus of the Portuguese presidency.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, talking about foreign policy, that's a very good keyword. I would like to elaborate a bit further on. But before we do that, I would like to encourage our online audience once more to take the opportunity and to ask questions to our panel. Please feel free to ask. So foreign policy, yes, I think this is definitely a policy field where Portugal can also add value with its presidency, because Portugal as a nation which has a lot of good contacts to India, also due to its history, and also to some African states. For example, I'm thinking of Mozambique. So how can Portugal help the EU to close in these relationships? I know that on the agenda of the Portuguese EU Council Presidency definitely are the relations with Africa and are the relations with India. And can this help the EU to make closer contacts and to position itself in a better way as a global player? I wonder if the ambassador wants to answer to this.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Just one quick comment on the previous couple of interventions. This is a fantastic circumstance in which Europe is actually putting its money where its mouth is. We are being coherent in our objectives and in the means to achieve those objectives. Significant portions of the vast funds that have been decided have been earmarked for the digital transition, for the green and energy transition, and for several projects that are designed to provide specific answers for the pandemic crisis. This is very encouraging, and this is why it is very important that the national recovery plans are adopted as soon as possible. And this is why it is absolutely essential that technical decisions that have to go through national parliaments, such as the own resources decision, which will enable the Union through the Commission to gain access to the funds that are needed. This has to be approved and ratified as quickly and effectively as possible. We are encouraged by the responses and the timetables that we're seeing, but this needs to be done just like that. It is essential. The other side of this, obviously, is that Europe is not an island. We do not want it to be an island. We want to have strategic autonomy, which is a concept very fashionable these days. But we want Europe to be strategically autonomous while being open to the world. We do not want this to be mistaken for any sort of protectionism. We want Europe to be competitive in the world and to be able to make her own sovereign, as it were, choices in this framework. This is why we are very firm believers, and we have to be honest and true to ourselves. We could not be presidency of the European Union without believing in the need to honor commitments and to go forward with the trade agreements that have been negotiated or that are being negotiated. We would very much like to give a push to the trade agreement with Mercosur, because we believe that this will be an amazing way to strengthen our connections with Latin America. We have outstanding negotiations also with Mexico and Chile. We have other trade agreements being negotiated with different countries like Australia and New Zealand. Very, very important key issue. India. This comes from a sort of division of labor that we agreed with the German presidency. Germany concentrated on China. It was not possible to have the physical summit in Leipzig with the Chinese president in September, again, because of the pandemic. We hope that it will, but there were many positive developments in the relationship with China, and this has to be acknowledged. We are hoping that by May, it will be possible to have the summit with India. A tremendous power, the largest democracy in the world, a country that should be taken to the top of our priorities in terms of political and trade engagements. And Germany knows this very well because you have approved very recently your own national strategy for the Indo-Pacific region. There are many interpretations as to geographically what this means, but you know, the two terms sort of explain themselves. We want to engage with Africa. Africa is our partner. They say that geography is largely destiny. And in this regard, Africa is our natural partner. We will be engaging with Africa at different technical levels in terms of economic cooperation, in terms of climate, in terms of security. But what we really want to see is a summit between Europe and Africa, Europe and the African Union, as soon as possible. It has to be well prepared. It has to have a comprehensive agenda. And we must not forget that Africa is important in itself, and not only for Europe. And we cannot afford to lose our strategic advantages, our edge concerning Africa to other international powers. What else can I tell you? I've spoken about Great Britain already, and I have spoken about the United States. What we can achieve with the US is immense. And we share values, we look at the world in the same way, and there should be very little that Europe and the United States cannot achieve if they truly work together with common goals.
Yeah, actually talking about Great Britain, questions are coming in, and there is a question also with regard to Great Britain. But before I ask that question, I would first like to give the opportunity to Mr. Kerner, who has been nodding. I saw that, and also Katharina, if you wanna comment on this. Mr. Kerner, please.
I thought maybe Katharina first because she but I was nodding when the Mr. Ambassador talked about the Mercosur agreement. I totally agree that that would be very, very important. I think we need to strengthen ties and trade all over the world. That is very, very important for us. But it's still very difficult to achieve an agreement here. And there is lots of resistance also from some parts of the European Parliament.
Katharina, please, last but not least, your comment, and maybe also on the specific potential which Portugal can use in this regard.
Let me start by addressing here the issue about the green transition and what is going on in Europe. While I think that environmental concerns are extremely important, we must understand also the effort that is being demanded to every single European taxpayer. It's true that there is that this is the planet that we live in, and there is no other choice. But we also have to understand, and this goes into actually trade agreements, what are we demanding from our industries? What are we demanding from climate transition? And what are we demanding from our foreign trade partners? So I think that I would urge those that are conducting the negotiations to actually address this, because it's if you want a fair Europe, it's also fair that you demand exactly what you are demanding from your citizens and your companies to foreign companies. So that is something that I think sometimes is kind of missed out in the conversation, or at least in the way that you communicate with the public. You also have this responsibility as a politician, as a representative of the public. Just a few words about foreign policy. I'm not an expert, for God's sake. Of course, Mr. Ambassador has much more experience in that than I will have ever had. But a few words regarding, so historically, we are a people of trade and negotiation. We did, so our colonies were actually funded on trade, which is slightly different from other European potencies. But we are here in Portugal, and at least us, Iniciativa Liberal, we are extremely concerned about the situation regarding Hong Kong, regarding the aspects in Cabo Delgado and Islamic attacks there. And this is in Mozambique, and of course also in India. So in our view, if possible, the Portuguese presidency should also use its influence to actually look at these particular situations. I have to remind that while the German government reacted to the situation in Hong Kong, actually Portugal didn't. So, and there is Portuguese people, there's a Portuguese citizen that has been arrested there So this situation for us is of concern. And as I said, also the situation in Mozambique. Mozambique is a former colony. It is extremely, in terms of development, extremely poor. And this is, I think that Africa is, as Mr. Ambassador said, a huge potential, and it's a natural trade partner for Europe, absolutely. But these are situations that I feel that as Portuguese, we are most sensitive on.
Yeah, and that's definitely an asset to draw the attention of the whole EU to these issues. Oh, and I see the ambassador also wants to add to this. Please turn your microphone on.
Yes, yes, just 30 seconds. Thank you for these last two interventions, and thank you about the references to Africa, Hong Kong, Mozambique, and India. I just wanted to point out that, as we know, because of the Lisbon Treaty, the country that holds the presidency does not chair the Foreign Affairs Council. And the coordination of the EU foreign policy is entrusted to a High Representative at this stage, Mr. Josep Borrell, actually former president. Several instances, and with a long tradition and a widely recognized name in the European Parliament, and also foreign minister. But my point is, as we speak, the Portuguese foreign minister is in Mozambique addressing the issue of Cabo Delgado with the Mozambican authorities, representing the Union in a mission that was entrusted on him by the High Representative. So this goes to show that even within the bounds of the treaties as such, there is margin for flexibility. And obviously, the fact that our foreign minister is in Mozambique is the result of this connection that we have with the Portuguese community, the Portuguese-speaking communities in countries in Africa. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Looking at the clock, time is running. So I think we could keep going and talk about this for hours more, but I also want to give the opportunity to our audience to ask their questions, which are coming in right now. First question from Johanna. She's asking, the ambassador, although the EU and Britain reached a trade deal last minute in December, Brexit remains far from over. Portugal and Great Britain are linked by a long history. With this special relationship, does this help to negotiate a more extensive set of trading agreements? How realistic is it to reach this within Portugal? Please keep your answer short so we can add the other questions as well to the discussion.
The very complex agreement that was reached in very late December is still going through the formal motions that have to be accomplished so that it can go into force with no constraints. There are many outstanding issues with the United Kingdom, and I think that yes, because of our special relationship over history, we talk about the oldest alliance in Europe, we will always be on the side of a close engagement with Britain on trade, on freedom of circulation, on rights of the expat communities, on a dialogue on strategic affairs, on security issues. We'll always be on that side of the fence, and we hope that our British friends as well. I'd like to think that a door has been shut, but a door can be reopened. Okay, thank you.
I think we all hope so. Yes, thank you, definitely. Then there's a question from Wilfried Rotman on the topic of education, which is directed at Katarina. It is extremely difficult to achieve a common understanding of standards and contents of especially professional education, job descriptions, and so on. How can we come to harmonized solutions?
So, well, Europe has actually delivered a lot of frameworks in order to skill recognition, degree recognition. With the, for instance, with the Bologna process, there should be much more harmonized solutions. What we see here in Portugal is that even if you come with, let's say that you took a PhD in Spain and you apply for a public job in Portugal, you have to go through what is called degree recognition by a Portuguese university. So in our view, this does not really make a lot of sense, because all the frameworks should have been made harmonized and compatible. The issue that I was referring to are other bodies, such as professional corporations, such as doctors, lawyers, and so on. So there's much more there that can be achieved regarding also bar examinations, for instance. I know that these are dependent on the local law, but for instance, there are aspects that it can have quite some equivalence, particularly when you have quite a lot of international treaties in certain areas. So what we think there is that there is much more that can be done in terms of simplification of access to the market, to the job market. That is what our position looks like. So in terms of professional skills, there are frameworks that actually certify what your skills are. So let's use what we have. Let's exactly know what is missing, and if it's missing, market failures should be addressed, what's already in the market, and if the markets are working, in a liberal view, they should be left to their own devices, let's say like that. If the market works, the state should regulate it in the terms of oversight, but not really interfere in it.
Thank you, Katarina. I would go directly to the next question, because quite a few questions are coming in right now. So let's speed up. There's a question from Gerald Christian Heintges, who is asking for more information on the topic of health and social union. I think this could be a question for Mr. Körner, if you're willing to answer to this.
Yes, of course. So, of course, the European Union has not really competences in the treaties on health and the social union. But what we are doing right now, of course, with the vaccination program and also with the EU for Health program, which is what was newly introduced with the budget, we're trying to help and coordinate. And I think we saw that it was a very good start, that we were trying to organize the vaccination together in Europe. What we may have been doing is be a little bit more aggressive in getting really the vaccination, especially for BioNTech and Pfizer, because now we're seeing the UK, which is really hurting me personally to see the UK being faster than the European Union. So maybe we should have been a little bit stronger there, because I think every day we come out of this pandemic earlier is so much worth in money and for the economy. So maybe we should have been a little bit more aggressive in ordering it, but I think that we have a European approach is a good one. And I think we will have lots of talks in next, also with the Portuguese presidency on vaccination. I think right now with the council, the heads of state are discussing about the vaccination certificates or some form. So how we come out of this after this pandemic, and this will be, I think, the discussions in the next month to come. But the European Union not really is a health union. I think it has not the competences. And personally, I think it should stay also health should stay a priority of the member states or a competence of the member states. Of course, the union can support each other, but I think it's good that we have it as a primary competence of the member states.
Important point. And one last question, as we have 4 minutes left. Last question on the Portuguese post-COVID recovery plans in development cooperation. What are the priorities for Portugal to ensure a fast and safe access to vaccination? Any volunteers to answer this question? Mr. Ambassador, please.
I can give it a go. I understand that this refers to Portugal specifically, or to
yes.
the EU as Portugal. One of the points we have made is that precisely because Europe is not an island unto itself, we need to show as much solidarity as we can. And one of our priorities is to make sure that the vaccination is universally available. It's a very tall order. It's something that is easier said than done. But I think that on a national level, most EU member states are reserving a significant part of the vaccines they have acquired through the European Union system to their cooperation partners. We are doing this with a number of African countries, as I know that other nations are doing. This is really a big challenge. Again, if we want to have an open Europe, if we want to have open borders, if we want to even respect, uphold the freedom of movement within Europe, and not to see Europe as a fortress in the world, we have to eradicate this virus as soon as possible. The best way to do that is through vaccination, and we need to show solidarity on this. We are committed to this.
Yes, totally. And I think this is a very good, these are very good final words to get this discussion to an end. But I see Katarina wanted to say something on that.
I think that, I don't think it will be possible to eradicate the virus, actually. I think that the virus will become endemic. I think that we will manage better. So my hope there is that one. I truly believe on the universality, the universal access to vaccines. I think that is something that every single government should take into consideration. I also believe that vaccination certificates, that only vaccinated people will have access to some freedom of movement. With such new technologies in the vaccines and concerns, I know that the vaccines are being proven safe. Let's see if they prove efficacy, if their efficacy is actually proven in the field, because it's different from clinical trials to the field. So I long for more science and more data there. And I would definitely like to see that. And I would definitely and now this is my Portuguese perspective and local perspective on it. I would definitely like to see the Portuguese government here providing more data, much more transparency regarding how it's managing the pandemic, and never forgetting during its presidency that the rule of law is actually what comes together all of us as Europeans. It's one of our absolutely fundamental values. So I hope that all this mess about the European prosecutor is settled very, very rapidly so that we can move forward.
Yes, definitely. And manage better is definitely the key word in these pandemic times where all policy field and our whole world is overshadowed by this virus pandemic. And yes, rule of law, transparency, all these values we are committed to in the European Union. We should stick to them. We should work for them. We should collaborate. I think that's a quite strong statement all our panelists made here today. And yeah, our time is running out. So I would like to thank very, very much all our panelists who have joined us today. I would like to thank the audience and yeah, stay tuned for more events to come from the Friedrich-Naumann Foundation. Our motto is Courage Now and Restart 21. So I hope that in 2021 we can all do things better and better and keep going. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ich bin bereit if you want me.
Thank you.